they don't have a mic apparently on that computer. So Matt's going to be joining us here really quickly. He's going to come back on the phone, and hopefully we'll be able to get this show on the road with the phone. You know, it's what happens when you are a traveling tournament director. You get to jump into situations that you don't know every day. So let me, I'm going to wait until he gets on here real quick. But anyway, while I have your full attention and we're waiting on Matt, first thing we wanted to do is make sure that we did a shout out to Donna Blevins. She is going to be your moderator on the third Thursday webinars every month. But this month she is in the hospital and she sends everybody her apologies, but we don't need apologizing. You know, she is absolutely a fabulous moderator and speaker, and we look forward to having her here in the future. And we would just want her to get well and get well quickly so she can return to us. Also, I wanted to make sure that everybody knows that this webinar will be the third Thursday. Next month's guests are going to be Jan Fisher and Cindy Violette. They are both members of the Women in Poker Hall of Fame. Jan has been a member and founder of the Tournament Directors Association. She's a bracelet winner. She won the inaugural Japanese Poker Open, so she has a beautiful bracelet from that. And looks like Matt did get on. Let's see if we can connect with them. Hang on. Matt, if you can hear me, accept the audio on your phone. And we should be able to connect you. And Cindy Violette. Cindy Violette.
Ooh.
Is that you, Matt?
It is me.
Yay! Now, if you could just turn your video on, I think we're going to rock and roll here.
Okay, where's my video?
On your own phone. There's a little icon.
There we go.
And there's my man. Hey, baby. You know, I tell you, all of these new technologies are fantastic. Every once in a while, there's a glitch, you know?
Yeah.
So, Matt, you're joining us from...
Bay 11 Casino in San Jose, California.
You know, I was just there. I was able to go up for about 10 days, and I snuck in there real quick. And, you know, I think that's probably the casino I met you at. Like,
oh, wow.
A million years ago.
Many years ago, yeah. We had used to have Lips tournaments here following our shooting star, so.
Yes. Yeah. So it's been a really long time, but welcome. You're our inaugural guest here at the Women's Poker Association third Thursday. WPA Talks is what we call this. It's just
okay, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's a roundtable discussion where it's just informal. People have the opportunity to ask you questions, and we've had some people submit questions, so I'll be able to do that. And I don't even know what they are. I'm going to open them up in just a few minutes. And
exciting.
We'll do that. But I wanted to kind of tell our listeners we're recording this, Matt, so people will be able to come back and they'll be able to listen if they weren't able to join us tonight live.
Okay, wonderful.
You know, a little bit about you. I mean, Matt Savage, the GPI Industry Person of the Year, which is pretty...
Two-time.
It's a deuce.
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome. So Matt, of course, is well-deserved to have an honor like that. You've been a pioneer in so many ways in the industry. I was telling people about next month's guest, which is Jan Fisher and Cindy Violette, and I was saying that Jan was one of the founding members of the TDA, but you are as well.
That is correct. Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about how you guys even decided to do this, and you know, how did you guys come together?
In 2001, I was working at actually late 90s. I was working at Lucky Chances Casino up in Northern California, and I was playing a lot of tournaments. While I was working, I would go and, you know, on my off days play other tournaments, and I saw that the rules were different everywhere I went. So I had this crazy idea of going to the World Series of Poker, and I'd never stepped foot into the World Series of Poker, Binion's Horseshoe, until that year, 2001. And I went in and asked a Bob Thompson and his son Robert Thompson if they'd be interested in helping me try and standardize the rules, and they basically kind of laughed it off as if it was had been tried before. Nobody was ever going to do it. So I was kind of disappointed, but at the same time, I had known Linda Johnson and Jan Fisher, and they allowed me to tie on the first TDA meeting we ever had with World Poker Industry Conference, which was something that was going on. Linda and Jan were doing that early 2000s, so we did that on the tail end of the World Poker Industry Conference, and Dave Lamb came in and joined us as well on the board. It was the first event that we ever had. 2001, we had the first TDA summit. It was 24 tournament directors from the United States and around the world, and it's grown over the years to now having more than 200 members, 200 people that attend, and over 5,000 members of the TDA.
Which is interesting because a lot of people think that you have to be a tournament director for, you know, a card room or something like that, although that is very much encouraged. But anybody who's interested in really knowing the rules of what the tournament and how to conduct a tournament and those kinds of things, they can join as lay people. Is that correct, or am I incorrect?
That's correct. And why they would be joining is to learn more about the rules, but also participate in creating the rules. So we have not only tournament directors, but card room managers and dealers and players as well to attend those meetings to try and give input to how we're going to form the rules and regulations of poker tournaments for use around the world.
Mm-hmm. So Matt, you started off as a player in the industry?
Yeah, I started off as a player in the early 90s. I was not a good player, so I saw that people were making a little bit more money and being more consistent in doing so by working. And so I got a job in the early years at the Old Garden City Casino in San Jose, where I was born and raised, and have since then, worked my way through the ranks up through tournament director. I've been a floor person. I've been basically everything in poker that you can name. And I think that's the best way to go about doing these things as well.
Mm-hmm. You know, there's a lot of people, I think, that have started off as players and, you know, just for one reason or another, just said, oh, you know, this looks like kind of fun. Maybe I'd like to start this job. And what would you say would be a good stepping stone for them to get into the industry side of things?
Oh, I would say for sure, always being in at the ground level to me is most important, because I think that you have to learn what it's like to not only be a player on the player side, but also, handling all of those jobs, and you never take anything for granted, because you want to, wear the shoes of everybody that you're working with so you can treat everybody fairly and the same. And I've always had that as my motto. That doesn't matter if it's, somebody that's cleaning tables or, somebody that's the owner of the casino. I treat them pretty much all the same, because I want to be treated with respect just like they do.
That's great. Now, since you've been around since the 90s, how would you think, or how would you say that poker has changed from then to what it is now?
Well, I think a lot of the poker back then was, based more on feel, whereas now it's based on people learning and getting better through books, through videos, through all forms and different ways of learning the game. Definitely a lot of that happening these days, where people are more read on what they know and have become more professional, better players.
I think we're having a little bit of choppiness going on. I think that the internet connection is kind of going in and out a little.
Okay.
We'll just keep going, and hopefully we'll plug along with this. So here's one of the questions that somebody submitted. They want to know what you feel is the best way to prepare yourself before entering a tournament.
Definitely a good rest. I mean, I can tell you that it's tough for me working, and I think that anybody having a clear mind would know that, having a good night's rest, not being out partying the night before, and really trying to focus is the best way. And I know that a lot of people go to Las Vegas during the summer, and they don't treat their bodies right during that time. They're out partying all night and going and playing these events, and I think that's not the best way to focus and concentrate. I do know people that are professional players that just take it serious as if it's their life's work, and really focus on that. I think a lot of times people come to these big events and have, kind of stars in their eyes, haven't been playing with people like that before, so they're not really prepared, and they are in awe of other players at the table and not so confident in their own play. That I think you need to be focused and know what you're doing when you go in. I think a big part of that is knowing the rules that you're going to be using, and so another reason why we created the TDA, so that the rules would be the same wherever you go.
Right. Now, there's a pretty significant difference between entering a tournament in our little home casino, where we're lucky if we get 5 tables that night, and entering into a sea of players at a WPT event or at a World Series event, or some of these larger tours. Can you tell me what strategy, a person who's never played in those large fields, what do you think that they should do and concentrate on when they first enter?
I definitely think you should go and enter it in advance, because again, you don't want to be the guy that's showing up late. A lot of these pros these days are doing so many different events and late registering in all of these events. I know that in World Poker Tour events, we have a lot of satellites that people can win their way into these events, and most of our stops will now put those players into the event at the start of the tournament. So you're going to be playing with all the satellite players. You're going to be playing with all the recreational players that show up on time, and not be sat at a table with a bunch of pros where you might be if you show up late. And I think that, it's one of the things that I always say is I think that it works better for players to show up early and on time, because not only do you create your own table image, but you find out the image of everybody else at your table. And I know the tables break and those things change and people late register, but I think that the players that show up on time are really taking their tournaments professionally and seriously.
Mm-hmm. Since you've been around for a long time and you've been on both sides of the felt, you've seen a lot of players who entered into this game and have developed into superstars into the game. Who do you think are some of the best players that are out there right now?
Wow, it's been a long time since I come up and see these guys, and the whole image and the industry has changed so much. Before, all of these guys were touring. They were playing the $300 events and the $500 events, the $1,000 events, and the $100 events for that matter. Now you see the top pros only playing in $10,000 buy-ins or $5,000 buy-ins plus, with big guarantees and high rollers. So you seem to see that those players are the ones that are have reached the top echelon of the game, and they are focused on those bigger buy-in events. So I think, like I said, there's a lot of value in playing some of these smaller buy-in events, because some of the best players aren't in those events. But, I've been around and seen some of the greats. I was there when, Phil Ivey was doing all of those great things. I always talk about Lane Flack being one of the best players I've ever seen in the early 2000s. And, they just have, Phil's gone on to be playing big cash games and big tournaments, and we don't see him very often anymore. So, guys that are there grinding it out every day, like a guy like Ari Engel, who is playing in everything, from $300 events up to $25,000 events. That's a guy I really like to see. And he personally admits that he's not as good as some of the other players. But I got to tell you, I feel like, he's really trying, and one of those guys that I like to see succeed, because he's done a lot for the game. But, you see the guys like Jake Schindler and all of the German high roller players, and a lot of those guys that are playing in these high roller events, they've really achieved something that not many have. Fedor Holtz and those guys, they continue to win at the highest buy-ins, and it's interesting to see how those guys can compete at those mind-numbing levels and keep winning as well.
Yeah. So I keep hearing you saying, these guys. How about the girls?
Yep, let's do it. I'm excited. I'm excited for some of the things that are happening for women in poker. I would love to see more women play. I always say if we could just get that number up to 20%, that's thousands and thousands and maybe hundreds of thousands more players. I've always been a supporter of what you do, with the Women in Poker Hall of Fame and the Lips Tour and all of the other ladies tours out there and ladies events. It's been tough. A lot of times these days, I'm in California now for a lot of the events. I do them here and I do them at Commerce, and we can't restrict or keep men from playing these events because it's considered against the rules or against the policies of the casinos or state regulations to do that. But I do feel like there's a place for women's events, and I also feel like there's definitely a place for women in the game. I always say that women are hard to read. I'm married. They're the hardest sex to read for sure. It's so of course I'd love to see women playing the game more often, and a lot of people are out there fighting very hard to make sure that people are treated equally. It doesn't matter who you are, which sex or which creed, religion, whatever. That everybody's treated the same at the poker table, and I'm a big proponent of that as well.
Yeah. What do you think is, we know what it's like because we're women and we enter the game and we evaluate a poker room when we go in. What do you do when you go into a poker room to make sure that it's an inviting place for all players? And I don't like to really point it out, but I'm going to point it out, is to make it a safe and environment for women when they come into the game.
Yeah, I mean, there are some card rooms I know that have zero tolerance for any kind of abuse, whether it be dealer, staff, or other player. And I think those are the rooms that I'd like to honor and be a part of and be there for. You go to a lot of different places in the world where it's a different ball game. There's just so much competition, and people are out to try and get every player that they can in their poker room. Whereas there are some smaller card rooms where we'll put up with no abuse, and they've got rid of and barred those players that are a problem. But obviously, I'd like to see everybody treated the same, and especially players that are new to the game, because I think that those are the most important and the lifeblood of the industry. The recreational players, the people that play for fun, and so I think that a lot of that has to do with the way I view each individual card room, and I again would urge any poker room director out there to get rid of those players that are going to be a problem and not treat everybody the same and fairly.
So, I know I keep going back and forth, but you and I have both seen the changes in poker in the past, 15, 20 years. And what kinds of things do you think the player faces now that we didn't see before?
One of the things is that's a good question. I'd probably say one of the things is players are finally coming around to understanding that playing slow is really negative on the game. I think that a lot of people, it takes a lot of the enjoyment away from a lot of people when you sit at a table and people are taking 2 and 3 minutes to play each decision on every street. And I think it really takes away from the pleasure and the enjoyment of the game. So, we're doing some things on the World Poker Tour. We're instituting an action clock where it's also, making sure that, when a clock is called, that nobody is, called out for that. And now we've reduced that clock on the TBA from a minute to 30 seconds. So we're taking steps to try and make sure people are installing and not only making it faster, but more enjoyable for everybody to play the game.
Mm-hmm. Even in some of the small little local card rooms that I play in, I live in Las Vegas, as you know, and we don't often frequent the Strip, even though some of the best games are on the Strip, but just accessibility and things like that, we go to the smaller rooms. And I always find it interesting to be playing in a, let's say a $75 tournament, and that includes the juice.
Yeah.
And you find these people who are just having Hollywood moments left and right. What would you advise other players who are looking at that going, would you want to say something to the player because, it's not good for the game, obviously, but
Right.
That's what they see on TV and they think that that's how they should act. Right. Any words of advice on that?
Well, I think that if you're uncomfortable with calling the clock on another player, especially a $75 tournament where you're probably playing 15-minute levels or, 20-minute levels at the most, you really want to see more hands. You want, the structure to be better because it's not deteriorating from people taking too much time. So if you're uncomfortable with calling the clock on another player, I think you're always free to go to the tournament director at any time and say, look, this guy's taking too much time, and you can do it on a break or away from the table, so you're not intimidated or feel intimidated by some kind of repercussion from that player. And I would say that that tournament director is going to be on your side on this issue, so they will look over that. And we've now instituted rules in the TDA where a TD can actually tell a player that he's got to play faster. So I think that's one way you can try and stop this from happening. But again, to take away the enjoyment of another by stalling or slow playing is just so irritating, especially when they do it as an angle to try and get you irritated, which I've heard as well.
And
I've
it
heard
works.
people say that they do this to upset other players, which is just frustrating.
Right. So, these very large organizations like the World Poker Tour, which you're the tournament director for, they focus on, the next level, the next big thing. And then you get to the point of being these high roller games. Do you ever look back and think about what, as an organization, you guys can do to start opening the doors for the game, for the new people that are coming in, creating some sort of programming that encourages them to participate in a World Poker Tour event or World Series or whatever, and not make it so difficult or
Yeah,
intimidating to
a
get
lot
in?
of different things. We start off with Club WPT, where you play online for a subscription and play and try and win seats into those. And this is for not only recreational players, but it's mostly recreational players. But some of those people are winning seats into our events. Then we have our WPT Learn, which is basically classes that are taught by professionals, and you go away for a weekend, you get to play in some other events that they have, but you also have classroom study where you learn. And I've always said in those things, if you just learn one or two things that are going to save you, $100 here and there in a certain pot, it's well worth the money. Then we step up to the WPT Deep Stacks level, which runs events for $1,000. And I even skipped over the WPT 500, which will be running at the end of the year, end of the summer at ARIA.
Mhm.
So we have a lot of different ways and levels, from a subscription as little as $20 per month, up to $500, $1,000 at WPT Deep Stacks, to our tours, which starts at $3,500. Which I encourage all of our partners, as executive tour director of the World Poker Tour, to run satellites. And I think that satellites are the key to these tours, a key to the World Poker Tour. Having these live satellites where people can win their way in for as little as $100 and step up their way to try and make a life-changing money by doing that. And I think that it's important for that. I don't even think it's important. I think it's vital for the
Mhm.
success of the tour for people to have these satellites.
I couldn't agree with you more. And one of the other things that we are learning about now is how many people are actually selling pieces of themselves so that they can actually compete in some of these larger events where their pocketbook won't normally afford it, but yet their play and their skill level is pretty decent and they have a good crack at making the money. What do you think is a fair kind of division of percentages? Because it's all over the place when people are selling stuff, selling a piece.
Yeah, I've had people offer to put me in events for 50%. That's always the sweetest deal of all.
Of
Uh,
course.
and then there's the issue of, do you have to make up whatever you've lost, and sometimes you don't, and sometimes you do.
Mhm.
I always feel like the best way is if you have friends and things that like to see you play or are happy with you playing poker, to take small pieces and try and give you the opportunity to play in these events. I've played in events you know for just the buy-in. Like I've taken multiple people putting up small amounts of money just so I could play in the event, because I've always said I love to play, and I like playing in these events. Even if I could just break even, I would love it.
Right.
A lot of people don't say that, but if I could play a $10,000 event and just make the money, I'd be happy. Because I enjoy the feeling of playing with all these players and these pros and things like that. But I think that you can find deals from friends is a better way to go. But if you're going to offer your playing ability out to other people, you're probably not going to get the markup that you think you get, more than maybe 1% or 10%. Where if it's $10,000 buy-in, you could ask for 1.1, which means that people would be paying $1,100 for you to play in that event. You'd only be collecting, 10% of your win. So I've
Mhm.
seen deals like that. Even the bigger buy-ins are taking even a smaller percentage just to try and get into these huge events. But I think that it's one of those things where working your way up is probably the best way to go, and winning your way through satellites. I know people that won't play in $10,000 events unless they win their way through a satellite, and they're very successful because they do it that way.
Mhm. Yeah, I always find it interesting, even during the World Series, that there are expert satellite players. I mean, that's all they do.
Sure.
They come in and then they play and they get the lammers and stuff and sell those off, and that's all they do, and they make great money doing it. So be good at whatever it is you do, right? Know what your strengths are.
That's for sure. I tell people all the time, the amateur players, all they do all the time is just say, I want more chips, 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 and,
Hmm.
longer levels and things like that. And it's frustrating for a guy like me because when you do those things, when you add those chips, when you add the longer levels, it costs more money to run those events. So you have to charge more to the players. And I hate to do that. I like to keep, the rake lower. I like a fair event. I know a lot of people like to play in 1-day events now more than 2 and multiple day events. So we try and have a good blend of all of those things. But, you know, the fact is that the longer the level and the more chips you give, the tougher it is for an amateur player or recreational player to win that event because, the skill is going to take over time. And that's why I say when you have these people that are good at satellites, those are faster levels, smaller chips, sometimes no antes, those type of things. So they've adjusted their game to where they're good at that specific event. And I think that if you can do that, if you can find your niche and you can make profit at it, I think that's the way to go.
Hmm.
I encourage people to play other games. The mixed games, I think that the fields are weaker. And so if you can learn those games and become good at those games, there's a good opportunity for you to make some good money in those games as well.
Hmm. Hmm. We had such a juicy poker boom, back in the early 2000s. And then, watched poker just explode. It was in everybody's living rooms thanks to World Poker Tour.
Hmm.
And then we had Black Friday.
Right.
Now, I don't think that everything that's happened post Black Friday has been negative. I think that there's been some positive things that have come out of it. Have you seen some positive things that have come out of Black Friday being no longer here?
Well, obviously online poker helped our market, but also hurt our market in some respects. It hurt with the TV side of things because all the online sites were doing all the sponsorships. So all of the TV networks saw all this money coming in from the online sites, and when
Hmm.
the online sites went away, they said, "Wait a minute, who's gonna pick up all the sponsorship, and who's
Hmm.
gonna pay for all these TV shows?" And so the market changed, flipped when that happened, and it became where they weren't asking for to pay to put poker on TV. They were asking to be paid to put poker on TV. So I
Hmm.
think that was a major thing for me that hurt poker. But a lot of people that were playing online now came out and played in the live arena, and we saw an initial what we thought was going to hurt, but actually helped some of the numbers of our tournaments and events. Um, but again, I think that one of the things that's happening these days is there's so many different events. You can pretty much play $1,000 event every day in multiple spots across the United States and around the world, so people don't need to travel as much. So I think that's one of the things where poker may have leveled off, but there's still a ton of poker being played out there, and poker is definitely not dead, and it's still being played. And it's a lot of things happening in the industry right now that are positive. I think that people are learning, becoming better at the game, and I think a lot of focus of what I've had is to try and fun back into it. And so I think that some of the smaller buy-ins and different kind of formats that we've tried out have done that.
Yes, I agree. Would you What would you encourage? Everybody back in the day started off playing the game with stud pretty much because that's what was being played in poker rooms. And then Omaha, and then, of course, the new game, Hold'em, showed
Right.
up. And then because of online poker and people learning Texas Hold'em through that, and No Limit especially, then moving into the new arena of live after they won their ways through online. Um, Now, do you feel like, oh, no limit hold'em is sustainable?
I do. I grew up in the, times of low ball, and for me was draw poker. So, there's definitely been different versions of the game that have become popularized and, gone away. But I don't see Hold'em going away. I think Hold'em's here to stay, especially No Limit Hold'em. It's still the most popular tournament. It's still the most popular game. Whereas years ago, you couldn't find a single No Limit game in Northern California, where I'm at Bay 101. Now there's more No Limit than there is Limit, and Limit's kind of dying off. So I think that it's probably one of the things. I mean, of course, I'd love to see some of the Limit games come back. I'd like to see some of the mixed games be introduced and be played, and pot limit and all of those things that keep poker interesting. Because I think that if it was just No Limit, it might that there are and do play that make it exciting.
Your favorite game, what would that be?
I'd have to say it'd probably be, if I was going to play in a tournament, it'd be half Omaha, 8 or better, half stud, 8 or better. And that's the event I look forward to every year during the summer, is the 2500 OE. And I think that if every tournament was that way, I'd be happy. I know a lot of people don't agree with me, but there are a core group of players that continue to play that game and keep it popular. And if it was a limit game, that's what it would be. But I do enjoy playing no limit tournaments as well. So anything that we're playing, as long as we're having fun, that's my main thing. If it's a fun game, I'll play anything.
Yeah. Do you think that it's important for a poker player to learn all the games?
I do think it's important for a player to learn all the games. If you're going to be a true pro, if you're looking at events that are played by, the top players, they're not playing just no limit hold'em. As a matter of fact, that's a very small part of what they play, but they are playing all the games. So, again, if you can get your card room to try out and do different things, and I know it's problematic in some cases because it's much easier for dealers to deal just no limit or even limit hold'em versus the other games. But again, expanding what you can play and expanding what people in the game, I think is only going to make you a better player and be able to find the kind of games that you'd like to play. Because you might walk into a poker room one day and see the juiciest, best, mixed game, and you're not able to play it. You only play no limit hold'em. So I do think that all of the best players in the world play more than one game, I believe.
I agree. Do you feel like there's any one of those, how there's the dealer choice these days, and they have some fun, wild games that have been put together and are being spread? Is there one that you would say to our audience to stay away from?
Well, I tell you what, the game that's a lot of fun, but probably the most skill is Deuces 7 single draw and no limit. See those guys. It's such a great game, and Billy Baxter calls it the truest game of poker, and there's a reason why, because it's all about position and bluffing and putting your opponent to the test. And I love to run those events, but I'm not sure I'd be able to play them.
They're tough. You're absolutely right.
Very tough.
What do you think about Chinese poker?
I enjoy playing it. I don't think it's a great tournament game per se, but I enjoy playing it. I occasionally will play a game with some of my friends. A guy, Justin Hammer, I work with down in L.A., and Ben Irwin up here at Thunder Valley, and a guy named Jordan Cutter. We usually get a game going, and I love playing with them because they are terrible at it.
Yeah, it once you finally learn, you can do it, but it can be an expensive game to learn.
Yeah, whenever I'm short cash, I'm always looking for Justin. That's for sure.
That's hilarious. Whoop. Do you need to go for a second, or
no? The owner of the casino walked by. He's wondering what I'm doing sitting in his conference room, I'm sure.
Tell him you're doing good for poker and the industry over here.
I will.
You're in a lot of different casinos. Women want to play other women in these casinos. And, there's the organizations like, LIPS that go in and, negotiate to have a ladies tournament in there. But of course, you can't be everywhere. What would first of all, what do you think a gal should say to a poker room manager, tournament director, if they would like to see them host a ladies tournament at their location?
Well, I think you'd have to be crazy to be a casino and not want to have more women playing poker, because again, it's just they represent such a small percentage of the players that are playing. So I think that that's, if you could really focus on saying, hey, we will not only host this event and help you run this event, but also bring some additional players to your casino. That would be, I think, the strongest plus that you would have, because if you could tell me, hey, I'll bring 100 women to your event or your casino, I'm all in. I'm there for you. I would do it. A lot of times when we have these things, and your tour wasn't like that, where we have like maybe a charity event where, they will say to you, we'll come and host a charity event or a ladies event at your property, and then they say, okay, you do everything, and then it becomes tougher for you because you're the host casino, and the people that are coming to you to run this event aren't providing any of the players. So
Mm-hmm.
you're leaving it entirely up to the casino to provide all the players. And I think that's one of the issues that we have, again, not only with lady events, but with charity events as well.
Right. What we would like to see happening, Women's Poker Association is about bringing new women into the game, in giving them an interest in the game, and putting together some sort of program to introduce the game to these gals. What would you think would be the best way to take it to their homes or bring them into a casino?
Well, I know that we do this down in Commerce. We have, what we call home games, and you can basically host your own game. So if you wanted to bring in a full table of whoever, recreational players or whatever, you can have your own table. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's a fun way to do it. And a lot of times, they reduce the rate for that, and they try and introduce it as, bring your home game into the casino. And I know that that might be another way that you could say that you wanted to do that. I know that private games are not legal per se. And there's been some problems with that, but I think if you bring your own game, you can get that started, and they're not going to have a problem running that for you. So, of course, if you can find a tournament director or somebody interested in having those things, or hosting those things, I think it makes it even better. Like we'll run a single table satellite anytime you guys want to come in and play,
Mm-hmm.
as many times as you want to come play it. If you bring in the players, if you bring the players, the ladies, the recreational players, amateur players, so they can play against each other, we're there for you. So again, I'm a big fan of any time you want to do that. Again, what happens is if it's a cash game, then you have to open it up to a list. But if you have people that are going to lock in and not leave the game, then we can do that for you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's interesting to me that when a casino, and of course I see this a lot, when a casino thinks about women, um, it's almost like, okay, girls, we're gonna let you come in and play.
Uh-huh.
It is so it's like the opposite end. It's like, they're very gosh, I don't even know how to put this other than say they treat us pansy ass, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a fine line, because you definitely don't want to be treated like a bunch of guys,
Right.
but we also want them to understand that what we're trying to do here is not necessarily make this a coffee clutch, but really we want to encourage women to learn the game, so they'll spread their wings, and then move on. That's what Lips has always been about. It was like, hey, come in here, learn the game, get good at it, and then go beat the hell out of the dudes.
Right.
That's what we like to see. And now some of these players over the years have been going to the highest levels of play.
Yeah, I mean, I was fun to see some of these the women that are doing what they're doing these days. Kristen Bicknell's winning these big events. It's fun to see that. I would love to see way more successful. Emma Zemjovic, who won a WPT, almost won her second one recently in Amsterdam, and it's tough for me because I'm very impartial all the time. But it's tough for me not to see and want more women to win these events, and I would love to see them close it out and be champions, because again, I think anytime a woman wins one of these events, it just opens the eyes of so many people that can, I can can do it, I can compete as well. So
Right.
again, I think treating everybody normal and everybody the same, but at the same time protecting the new players to the game and protecting the women so that they don't feel uncomfortable. I think that's vital for any casino to make sure that their playing experience is nice and enjoyable.
hmm Well, I'm always going to throw this at the World Poker Tour every time is, we would love to see ladies night back every
Yeah,
time,
that
every year. I know
really
that
was.
about every 3 or 4 years it comes back to a discussion and it happens, but it's so few opportunities outside of really, and I know that these are ladies only events, but outside the ladies World Series of Poker and the Lips Grand Championship, there are very few title events, for these women. The World Series of Poker Circuit Tour has a ladies event in it, and it used to get a lot of attention, but it doesn't anymore. I don't know why, but it doesn't. And but the World Poker Tour Ladies Night was always something special because
Yeah,
there was the wild card factor, and then the pros coming in to play it, and of course it was a charity event. But
right.
I'm gonna put the bug back in your ear, you put the bug back in their ear, and get that going.
You got it. I think we're going to be doing some more made-for-TV stuff on the World Poker Tour, so hopefully we can bring that back because it was fun, and it was one of our most watched shows we ever had. So I know that
Well,
people
who doesn't
enjoy.
want to watch a bunch of girls?
Yeah, that's true. True.
Especially a lot of these little hottie girls, that are out on the circuit these days.
Oh,
Um,
stop. That
it,
doesn't mean I'm happily married, so I don't need to look. I only see my wife.
well, you have a hottie. That's why.
Oh, that might be part.
Yes, yes. Anybody who knows Matt knows Marianne. He's got a very special woman. A very special
Right.
woman. Let's see here. I'm gonna go back to my little questions here because I want to make sure I covered it all.
Well, I have a second. I want to say congratulations to you for making the Women in Poker Hall of Fame. That's awesome.
Oh,
I'll be
thank
there. I'm looking
you.
forward to that. What's the date of that again? If anybody wants to go, how do they get there?
The Women in Poker Hall of Fame is June 26th. It's a Tuesday. It's being held at the Orleans Casino in Las Vegas. It is an open to the public event. Anybody can purchase a ticket. The luncheon, I think, is $50. That includes your lunch and, all the hoopla and everything. And if you've never been before, it is pretty amazing. And I'm not saying that because I'm getting inducted this year. I'm saying it because I've attended every year and watched it, and you literally are watching women in poker history,
Right.
So, and unlike, the Poker Hall of Fame, Poker Hall of Fame is not open to the public. You have to be invited to attend something like that. But this is one of those opportunities that you can get into it, watch it, and be part of the history and,
And
being
not only that, like you said, it definitely helps, out women in poker. So, I mean, anything that does that, I think we should all support it. And you and Maria Ho are truly worthy of being inducted this year. I'm excited to be there. I'm going to be there. And I
Yeah,
think
you're
I'm.
gonna be there. You're our keynote speaker. You better be there.
All right. Yeah, I'll be there.
Yeah, all these women who have gone before me have pretty much been inducted with their peers, people who have come along with them. I'm the lucky one that's the 60-year-old that gets to take the pictures with the 35-year-old hottie.
Right.
And I was like, okay, Maria, look dowdy that day, can you? But this gal and other women like her in this game, I am so impressed with their play, and I think that they are true role models in the game, and will help encourage and elevate other women in the game. Now, I'm not sure if you are frozen or I'm frozen, so I'm going to unmute real quick Ms. Jana so she can tell me. Hey, Jana.
Yes.
Okay, is it Matt or I that is frozen?
Matt's frozen right now.
Okay, Matt's frozen. Gosh darn. Well, it looks like we're very close to the end of our seminar anyway. I do want to apologize for our early challenges with our technology, and maybe Matt will be able to dial back in and get back in. But, this is a very fabulous opportunity for us to be able to provide this to our membership, and also for people in the industry to have an intimate conversation with people who you might not normally get to do that with. So we strongly encourage any suggestions of somebody who you would like to see as a guest on the Third Thursday webinars. Please just, send an email to admin@wpa.poker, and we'll see what we can do about getting them on the show. And like I said, Donna Blevins will be back. She's from Big Girl Poker, and she'll be moderating these seminars in the future. And I guess with that, we'll go ahead and close the show. And if you, there's
That was
Matt.
me.
Yay!
Sorry.
That's okay. I was just kind of wrapping up a little bit because I wasn't sure if you were going to be able to come back.
Okay.
But before we do, is there anything that you would like to do to say to the gals that are listening and to those that are in the game right now? Any words of encouragement or?
Oh, just, if you ever have any questions about any rulings or any, thing that's going on in poker, I'm always willing to help. I'm pretty out there on social media, with my Twitter account at Savage Poker. And I'm a huge supporter of everything you're doing. I'm a huge supporter of everything that women in poker are doing. And of course, I'd love to see more women playing the game, as I've said multiple times. Is there anything I could do to further that along, to fight against causes that are, that are anti, sexism and all of those things? I'm a big part of. I just think that, if we could all just treat everybody as equals, it would make the game a lot better. It'd make the world a lot better. So I'm always happy to see what you're doing to try and grow the game. And I think that there is a lot of room for growth in this game still. So I'm excited that, what you're doing, what is going on these days. And I just would like to see as many more people playing the game.
Absolutely. Hey, I just wanted to real quick. The Women's Poker Association objective is to actually assist poker rooms and in creating environments and implementing strategies and best practices with their staff on how to do things like diffuse situations that become uncomfortable or whatever. And at some point we would like to certify a poker room that they are, actually a Women's Poker Association certified room. So if a woman who is entering the game, and that's all they have to do is look for the plaque on the wall or the decal in the window, and they'll know, that this room encourages women to be there, and that they can always go to a floor person if there's a situation and it will get handled, and those kinds of things. Is there do you feel like there's something that we need to do to be able to open the doors in some of these poker rooms? Like,
Definitely.
how would we approach
I'd say reach out to the poker room director and say, look, this is a problem that we have in the game. You may not see it because you're at a high level where you're not seeing it, but there are issues that are happening every day in every game where people don't feel comfortable. So I think maybe they need to start training from the top of things to look out for people to feel uncomfortable. Maybe people being abusive, maybe people drinking too much, swearing too much at the table, saying things that are off color. I think that all of those things, are in the game already, but I think that they could be fixed. And I think that if we had somebody out there that was pushing training on those things, I think that it would make it a lot easier for the poker directors to see it from the top and understand that there is an issue with that, there is a problem with that, and so that people could feel safe and know that they're going to enjoy their experience when they're in your poker room.
I find that interesting that you say, because and it isn't exclusive. Bad behavior and drinking too much is not exclusive to men.
That is true.
It happens with women as well, but we want it to be encouraged to be curbed for everyone.
Right.
that everybody feels good. And and some of the things, and this was something that was left with me that I read recently. There was a gal that went to her poker room, her local poker room, and she would just stare. She wanted to play, but she was terrified.
Right.
But she would just stand at the rail and she would just stare into the poker room. And she did this for weeks. And not one staff person ever approached her and said, "Hey, how are you? Would you like to come in?" And yeah, and it's those kinds of things that I think would totally welcome somebody to come in. And I don't think it needs to be a woman that we're talking about here. I think anybody, just teaching those little things that to be observant about what's going on in a room and how we can continue to grow the game are the kinds of things that WPA wants to offer.
Yeah, I mean, I just did it today. I've done it I made it a decision before to just walk up and introduce myself to a few people here at Bay 101 that I've never seen before. And I've done that, and they kind of look at you. They kind of get like, what's going on here? But I still say, when you're working in a poker room, if you know the person's name and when they walk in, they're coming back to your place. If you say, "Hi, Lupe, how are you doing today?" and get to know a little bit about them, and it makes it so much more enjoyable experience. You feel like you're part of a family. It's happening less and less, and I think that's a problem. I think it needs to happen more and more. I've instructed my staff, when I work down the Commerce or when I work up here at Bay 101, that if you don't know the person's name of somebody that's been here multiple times, there's a problem not with them but with you. And you need to make sure that you make them comfortable, you make them feel wanted to be there and be a part of your room.
Right. Now, Matt, I know that this is off poker topic, but what do you think about the Golden Knights?
That's awesome. I mean, it's so much fun. My wife and I have had a ton of fun with it. We have season tickets, and being in Vegas, following the shooting, I can go back before. People said that Las Vegas has no soul or no, it's a bunch of transients and things like that. And to be honest, it kind of felt that way. But, after the shooting and then when the Vegas Knights started playing and people kind of got behind them, and everywhere you go in Vegas, it's Go Knights Go. There's banners, and they have a big jersey on the Statue of Liberty, and, Caesar's Palace has the guy with the stick there. Everywhere you go, it's just shopping. If you walk out the door, the clerk is saying "Go Knights Go." It's really kind of made Vegas a community, and I think that if anything came out of that awful tragedy, the fact that we kind of bonded together as a city. And I think when people come to the World Series and all the events that are in Las Vegas this summer, they're going to see that it's a different town. It's a different feel. And I think that the Knights have a lot to do with that. I'm a huge NHL fan and have been for years. And fought with my wife a little bit last couple weeks because they were playing my hometown San Jose Sharks. But the Knights beat them, and now I'm back on that bandwagon. And I'm a big fan of hockey. I'm a big fan of the Golden Knights, and I hope they go all the way.
Yes. Me too.
Yeah, it's fun.
I don't know if you know this about me, but I was born and bred in the capital of San Jose, Milpitas.
Oh, very nice. Really?
Yeah.
Right.
I went to San Jose State and the whole deal. So I also was a Sharks freak,
Okay.
So I'm having to make the transition as well.
Yes.
But
I spent a year and a half in Milpitas myself.
Yay! All right. Well, Matt, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your time. We know that you're very busy, especially while you're on the floor working at Bay 101. We appreciate your time and all of the wonderful information that you shared with our listeners. And we hope to be able to have you back again in the future. And, we'll definitely reach out to you when our curriculum and things are ready for presentation to poker rooms, and perhaps.
Yeah. I'm in 100%. I would love to see it. I'd love to see more of that happening. And, I'm very busy the next few days, going from here to Commerce the next couple of days, and then over to the ARIA for the Tournament of Champions and the Bobby Baldwin event. So, the WPTs keep me very busy. I'm excited to be a part of it, but I'm also excited about going home and being home for the summer. Right. And facing that heat. I love it. Play some golf.
And it's coming, baby. It's coming. Yes. All right, Matt. And thank you to all of our listeners. And also let everybody know that these recordings will be available for future listening at any time. And you just need to go back to the page that you were given in your email, and you'll have a link on where to get the recording. All right. So thank you very much, Matt. And to all of you, hope you have a great night, and we'll see you back next month.
Thanks a lot. Go Knights, go.
Go Knights.